I apologize about yesterday.
Oh no, it's good, man. I hope you're feeling better.
And it was my birthday, and
Oh, happy birthday, man.
yeah, it was
Mad.
yesterday, and I had two podcasts yesterday,
Wow.
and the one after you would have been one, and then I had one at three, and then I went out for my birthday dinner, and then I had phone calls galore all evening, and I didn't get
Cool,
off the
man.
phone. For the last call was off the phone around 11:30 or 12, and I'm like, this happens once a year.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's nice to receive all that love and attention and stuff, but then yeah, it's you got to kind of make the rounds, check in with everybody and such. But no, I'm glad you got some time to enjoy yourself. Sucks that
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
feeling bad, man. I hope you're feeling better now.
Yes, so that's great. So how are you? How is UK at this time? Is it snow? Is it cold? What's the temperature, weather like?
Oh, mate, we could do a whole podcast on UK weather. Like,
Just on the
on
weather.
it
Yeah.
for real, it's that crazy. I mean, I live in Manchester, right? And I
Oh,
grew up in
nice.
London. And I grew up in London. I've lived in Manchester now maybe 3 years. I've also lived in Europe for some time. So I've had like an experience of different kind of climates and such. And what I can say is Manchester, the jokes and the memes are true. It does always rain in Manchester generally. So I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit warmer in general because of that fact, but the winds are pretty intense sometimes. But because we're not like a coastal city or something like that, it's not as bad as say like Liverpool. Like I went there recently for filming, and
Nice.
I mean it was already cold anyway, but because of I'm pretty sure because of the local sea, it was like made it that much more intense. But the best way I could explain British weather, in all honesty, is it's like it's unpredictable. It's crazy. There's no consistency to it. It really is all over the place. And sometimes that's fun. Like the other day, I kid you not, it hailed like a hailstorm for maybe half an hour.
Really?
And then it stopped. And then it did it again for another half an hour more intensely. And then it stopped. And then it was snow. And then it was rain the rest of the day.
Oh, wow.
And that's just one day. I'm not kidding when I say the weather is crazy.
Don't
But
you
yeah, it
ever
is what
have
it is.
sunny days down there?
Oh, sure, of course, of course, of course. Well, that's a whole other thing as well. In winter, much the same as anywhere else in the world, I imagine it's one particular climate pretty much all the time, and you do get very beautiful days here, like sunshine and such. But in the summer, oh my god, it's like the other extreme. It's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So, like, the best way I could explain it, I mean, Manchester's up north is not as bad as down south. It does get pretty intensely hot, but when you're in a city like London, like I've often likened it to being like when you're in a greenhouse in
Hmm.
summer and you're like, it's intense heat. It's like being under like a magnifying glass or something. It's like that. Um, but because I think there's like a little less pollution in a city like Manchester, so you can breathe a little bit more, but it's still
Yeah.
as intensely hot, and it's only getting hotter, man. Harsher winters, harsher summers. So yeah. And to the other part of your question, life is good. Life is unpredictable for me as well. So there's a bit of a metaphor there, a bit of a link between myself and the weather. Um, I'm just kind of focusing on pursuing acting projects and building that career. I'm posting a lot with my podcast, the Christian Reeve podcast, my Patreon. So I've got a series on there called Life of Christian Reeve, which is basically me telling stories,
Hmm.
dropping updates on my life. So, for instance, today I dropped an episode about my acting journey so far since 2019. Um, I do a lot of stuff online, like live streams and such. I'm basically always trying to keep active and try to do things to further my career, to learn, to grow, etc., etc. And one of those things is appearing on shows such as yours and meeting lovely people like yourself.
I really appreciate that, Christian. Yeah, I was reading a lot how you're an aspiring actor, writer, musician, YouTuber, streamer, and all-around entertainer. I'm interested in knowing about all this. So you already gave us a
Yeah.
little bit of history of what's happening now and the Manchester weather, and where you were wearing bowler caps and suits and
Mm,
carrying around umbrellas.
yeah. Now people still carry umbrellas, but yeah, I suppose the fashion has changed a lot. I mean, I can't keep up with the fashion now. I'm getting up to a point now, like for me, like I'm about to turn 30, right? And I'm starting to enter like dad territory without being a dad yet. So, like I'm basically nearly there.
Mhm.
It's weird. Like I've got younger siblings who look up to me. There's people in my community who look up to me. You know, it's weird. Like you get to this point where you go through a certain amount of life experience. You get to a certain point, and you kind of assume that next role. Like, okay, this is the next evolution of who I am, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to like fashion, for me, I'm still stuck in the 2000s as far as like
Yeah.
fashion. I don't think I'll ever move out of that. For me, it's, you know, I grew up as a skater kid, metal head rocker kind of vibe. And I think that's always going to be a bit of a part of me. But I do like to mix it up and try different styles and such. But when I look at the modern fashion, like what people are into, what people walking down the street would generally wear, it's not personally for me. I don't really understand the whole designer labels thing. Like, you know, I think it would be cool to, for instance, own like a really nice suit, you know, a tailored made
Yeah.
suit or something. But when I see like, oh, I've got like Gucci everything, I just like, I look at the clothes and I just wouldn't want to wear them personally. I don't get it, you know, and maybe I don't know, maybe it's just one of those things, you either get it or you don't. But I prefer classic kind of styles. Like when I look back at photos of the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, for me, that's like amazing fashion. It's really interesting and just it evokes a lot of things, emotions. It's classic. Like I'll give you an example. There's a video doing the works at the moment. And it's this like really, really beautiful lady walking around like, you know, Italy, France, whatever. And she's wearing classic kind of something, you know, a la Bond girl kind of vibe, right? And everyone stops and stares and looks at her because she stands out. And you know, it's a fun video. It's just you know, just for a laugh or whatever. It's for fun, but it does kind of speak to how, you know, fashion can capture the imagination sometimes. You know, like I love fashion personally. I'm not like a big aficionado, like I'm not a big, like, you know, really, really into it. But yeah, I appreciate it. Like both men's and women's fashion. Like when I see it, I'm inspired by it. I like it. I like to see interesting things. But then there's other things that don't make any sense to me. Like you see like fashion shows sometimes and they're wearing all these really weird costumes, which
I
I think,
know.
if I've understood that correctly, and like people in the comments, people listening, if anyone out there is into fashion, please educate me because you know I don't know. Okay, I've heard that the point of that is to kind of demonstrate, like there'll be like things within that that could become the next thing. So it's not that everyone's going to walk around. Like I'll give you an example. There was one I saw the other day where it's literally a guy in like a bed, like you know, like his hair was all messy and he had a pillow and the duvet, and you know, and I think some of it is just art. I think, you know, akin to, it's like moving art, so I understand it from that perspective. But I think some of it's like, okay, in the next season you may see more of these materials being used, or you might see like this kind of style or an aspect of this style. I think that's what it's about. But again, it's a foreign kind of crazy industry that I know nothing about, but I find it interesting. So there you
I
go.
found it very interesting. I saw someone walking down the Model 1 runway, and they were dressed in this really stupid looking dress that made them look like a hedgehog. I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, "Would you honey, we're going out for dinner. Please don't wear that
Could you
because we're not
imagine?
going out for
You
dinner."
just, you're sitting down and you just, when you get up to go to the bathroom, the table flies
Yeah.
everywhere, smashes into people, and you're like, oh, sorry, it's for my art.
I know. I'm
I don't know.
like, what? Like, please tell me that they're not actually wearing those dresses that is going to be intended to go to like a cocktail party or something. Really?
Oh,
Like,
I would
wow.
totally do that just for laugh. Just make it really, really difficult for people. Just walk around in a really, really annoying costume, the way everyone has to walk around you. It's kind of sadistic, I think.
Well, everyone, thank you for watching. We have Christian Reeve from the Christian Reeve podcast, and very interesting podcast. Everything is linked down in description. We got a little bit of history from Christian already, so we can move on to other things, such as, can you give us an idea? It says that you're an aspiring actor, so let's start off with that.
Okay,
Why?
right. Before what? Oh, wow, so deep. Okay. Well, before I address that, I will change something. So
Mhm.
I've started branding myself now as actor. And the reason for this, I've had quite a few friends and people reach out to me and be like, "You're doing it. You are an actor. Why do you keep saying you're an aspiring one when you're actually getting paid work and you're actually doing it?" And they're right. And I think that this is an important point for us all to remember, that if you're doing the thing that you love and you're making a living from it and you're doing it, then you're doing it. You don't have to say aspiring anymore, you know? I think in my mind I always used to think like, "Oh, well, unless I'm in a Hollywood movie, I'm not doing it yet." That's wrong. I am actively doing it. I'm doing it every single day, and it's exciting. I got offered a role this morning, for example, right? I am an actor, but it took a while
Congratulations.
for me. Thank you, but it took a while for me to like believe it. And there is, don't get me wrong, I'm still chasing it. You know, it's one question I always get is, have you been in anything I would know? And it's so sometimes that it can really hurt. It's like, yeah, I've been in productions, you'd know, but sometimes it kind of demeans everything that I've already done. But it's a fair question, and how you take it says everything about you. But to address your question, why? Um, it's kind of a number of different reasons. I started out as a musician when I was young. I was always really, really into music, and I always will be. It's a big part of who I am, what I do. I still write music. I still perform regularly. I think I always will. I love it. And one thing in music is obviously the performance element. You go on stage, you perform in front of people, and I always enjoyed that. I enjoyed the energy, I enjoyed the setup of it. But I think for me it was all aspects of it. It was everything from creative, so creating a song, working on it with people, all the way up to when you get to the stage and you perform it, right? So it's all elements that I enjoyed. And over the years, my goals and visions change, and I still pursue that to some extent, but it's not my main goal. Like, my main goal is to be an actor, to be a voice actor, to do as many projects as I can in that sphere, and to build other things like podcasts and shows. And I want to kind of just push myself as much as possible and see what I can do, and just constantly test myself, right? Connecting music and acting, when I first started acting back in 2019, I just did it originally for fun. I was just like, "Oh, whatever, this would be a bit of fun," but I fell in love with it. And I was trying to understand why. And I remembered that it kind of reminded me of being a musician and how that felt. But it was so much more. It was like, with music, I was only using 60% of myself, in a sense, right? But when I did acting, it's like I use everything. I use all of me, all the creativity, all the fire in my soul, and the everything, every element of myself goes into that performance. And also the behind the scenes, pitching ideas to a director, or writing, or all those different elements. Because in the modern age now, as an actor, as an aspiring actor, whatever, you got to be everything. You got to be a
Mhm.
marketeer, a photographer, videographer, writer, everything, right? So to answer the question of why, I love to perform, I love to entertain, and something shifted certainly in the last year, where I don't think about numbers anymore. I don't think about, you know, trying to make it anymore. I'm working every day to try and make it, and I'm working hard, and I really hope that it works out. Um, but the main reason I'm doing this is because I love to do it. It feels like what I was born to do. And it's one of the only things in life that truly makes me feel alive. Because, you know, I've worked in office jobs, I've worked customer service, I've worked every kind of job you can imagine. And I worked hard in those jobs, but I didn't wake up and think, this is what I was born to do. This is, you know, I didn't wake up and feel invigorated or feel passionate. I just kind of felt like, yeah, this is fine, you know, whatever. I pay, you know, get a paycheck, go to work, maybe take a holiday. Like, okay, fine. But that to me didn't feel like life. That just felt like existing. And I want a life where I'm free to pursue all these different things and give something positive to the world, you know, give thought-provoking things, give passionate things, positive things, things that entertain people, inspire people, and bring hope to people. And I just want to push myself as much as possible and see how far I can take it.
Yeah, that's very interesting story there, and how you're so passionate and saying that you just got rolled this morning, which is great. Um,
Thank you.
I like how you said, "Have you ever been anything in that I know?" um,
But that is jarring sometimes. Like it's like because I know what they mean is like, oh, I mean, maybe I recognize you. I don't know, not too sure. Like I think the problem is, and here's an important distinction: you can be an actor, a working actor. I know many working actors that you've never heard of, but they're constantly getting work. It's possible to be an actor and not be quote unquote like famous. You know, there's plenty of, and that's the thing. Like, it's all dependent on what your goals are. You know, for me, my goal is to be a working actor and to do this for a living. My goal is not necessarily to become famous or to be like
mhm.
super successful. Sure, I'd love that. I would love to see where that could take me and what I could achieve. And but the main goal for me is to test myself as an actor, to see how good I can get, to see like what's the best stuff I could do. Because acting is about testing oneself. It's about testing all of the abilities and, you know, taking a character and making that your own, like really becoming that character. Like when you really take the craft seriously, you sit down, you research, you study, you do everything possible to make that character come alive. It's not just, okay, pretend to be this character. Like you gotta really sit down and do your homework, and then you become that character. And when you can win people over and make them believe in that and suspend their disbelief, then you've succeeded. And that for me is the constant goal, to be able to just keep trying to push oneself to do that and achieve that.
We've had
Kind of did
several actors on our platform, and the other one was just an actress yesterday, and I dredged up um, characters that she was in years ago,
cool.
and she was totally surprised that I researched her. I'm like, yeah, I researched you. Um, and the best part of it is some of these actors, they also they're producers, they're editors, they're
Hmm.
directors, not just actors. So they have something to fall back on. But some of them are like I say. So the one actor we had a couple of weeks, I asked him, "How do you direct yourself? How do you find
Ooh.
the actors? How do you find the actresses?" Um, and then I saw a lot of his films that he directed.
Mhm.
So it was amazing. And so with you, when you talk about getting roles and how you want to be a working actor, what kind of
Mhm.
roles are they? Like, what kind of roles will you say, no, that's not me? Or, yeah, I'd take it. Would you take every role that was offered you?
I wouldn't take every role. There's been some roles that I haven't gone for. I think a lot of the time it comes down to like, what do I think I can believably achieve? I will go out of my comfort zone. I will try things that I don't feel I can do sometimes because I want to test my ability. For instance, I don't tend to go for like comedy roles,
Mm.
but I have explored that on occasion and I can do it. But like I wouldn't consider myself a funny person. Like I can sometimes make people laugh. I can come up, you know, I think my timing is good, but in reality, you know, if I was doing a comedy sketch or whatever, um, chances are it would be with someone else's material, wouldn't be mine. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I've always believed in. There's this wrestling promoter, Paul Heyman, that always says, "Accentuate your strengths, hide the weaknesses." And that's what I always try to do. And I work on my weaknesses, don't get me wrong, but like I'll just sit and review the role and just see how the dialogue looks and see if it's something that I could pull off, you know? I'm at an interesting part of my career now where it's the experimentation phase. And I think for actors, it's good to always kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone. I don't think it's good to just go for every single role that you're offered, but if you feel like it makes sense for you, that it feels like, yeah, this is. I suppose what it really comes down to is it interesting to you? That's the real key. It does the story interest you and inspire? Is it something that you want to be a part of? Like for instance, I was part of a production recently where the production's called How May I Help You? And it was a student production with a budget. So this filmmaker, she's moving on, she's about to finish, and she's moving forward with her career. And she sold me on the idea. She basically said that like it started out as like real life phone conversations, like customer service conversations that she wanted to kind of turn into a short film.
Mm-hmm.
And so she did that. And I sat down and I read the script, and when she told me that it was real, it kind of hit me. It was like, oh wow, because it was quite an intense scene. It's a man who he clearly has like a drinking problem, and the guy on the other end is they're talking about like his energy bill or something. Like it's not like, do you know what I mean? But he just wants someone to talk to, and that's something really relatable. And you know, I think we've all been there when we just wanted to be heard. We just wanted to have another human hear us for 5 minutes, you know. And my character, and again, based on a true story, is kind of just keeping on the phone with this guy and kind of just taking himself out of the customer service role for a second and putting himself in the human role and just being there, still being professional, but being there, you know. And I've worked in customer service many years in the past, and I can tell you that sometimes it forces your hand, you know, and you got to do that. You got to forget the situation and just be a human and be there for that person. And sometimes it gets you in trouble. I've had that. I've had the situation where, you know, bosses have said to me like, oh, well, you shouldn't have done that. You know, it's not professional or whatever. And I'm like, you got to do what's right. You know, you got to do what's right, what's morally right. So yeah. Anyway, I like to kind of just explore and challenge myself, and that's kind of my approach, I think.
Well, they say that the customer is always right, and sometimes that's not
Mm-mm.
the case. Sometimes they're wrong. It's sort of like the life coach who says, "Now, class, instead of saying that you have problems or you have a problem, let's put the word opportunity in there." And the guy stands up, hello, yes. I have a drinking opportunity.
I have the opportunity to hit you.
But that's a problem to hit me.
That's your problem.
But
No, I get you, man. I get you.
that's interesting because I actually, when they say that your call will be recorded, it actually is, because I heard some really like it was like a video or an audio of some of the conversations that customer service had.
Right.
And I couldn't believe some of the people that actually called with problems, like
Mm-hmm.
a guy complaining that he got his computer back from the computer repair person, and he was going off on the guy and telling him off and swearing at him for an issue that wasn't even their problem, you know? Yeah, so it
Yeah, I
was
mean,
interesting.
I mean, I think I understand. I think with customer service, like, look, the people you're talking to, I remember my dad telling me this at a young age. He was like, listen, if you ever want to get anywhere with customer service, speak to the human, get the person on your side, make them want to help you. Because at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, they don't give a flying F word about the. I'm not going to swear. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to swear less. They don't care about the company, you know. I mean, because most people care about making a living, and you know, professionalism is important, but a lot of the time they know that like it comes down to silly rules or policies that the company has, and 9 times out of 10 the company can help you. It's just they put a lot of stuff in place to probably make it more difficult, you know, to help you. Like what I tend to do is if the person says I'm sorry I can't help you, I'm saying okay, thank you. Would you be able to put me in touch with your manager or someone else? But do it in a nice way, not in that Karen way where you get all like shirty and be like, "Oh, this is unacceptable. Put me to the next person." You just be like, "Would it be possible to talk to someone else?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, sure." You know, and maybe some people get a bit annoyed about that, but a lot of the time it's just they're forwarding the call. You know, and all of this. Like I remember one time I was on the phone trying to get a change a phone contract, right? And it took me maybe I think I was on the phone for like 5 hours being passed
What?
from like yeah, being passed from like I think I was getting calls. Being sent to like the Philippines or something to their call center in the Philippines, and I was being passed from person to person. And the whole time I remained calm, and I'd repeat everything I just said. So I'd be like, "This is what I'm on. This is what I would like to be on." And basically, what I wanted was a new phone and like to pay less money. That was basically what I wanted. And so I'd just be calm and explain myself. And when they would tell me, I'm sorry, I can't do that, I'd say, please, could I speak to someone else who'd be able to help me with this? And what would happen is I'd be passed around and they'd do that and they'd normally push it up and up and up. But I wouldn't accept no, but I wouldn't be aggressive. That was key. I'd just be like, okay, well, put me in touch with someone that can help me then. And then they started hanging up on me. But I'd been polite the whole time. And eventually, after like 4 or 5 hours of being on the phone, I get through to this guy. And I think he's in an English course. I think he was an English guy. And I start to begin to say what I've, you know, all the stuff I've said. And he's like, I'll stop you there, Christian. I've got all your notes here. We've been recording them. Keep a note of them. Because that's the thing. You think like they don't keep track of what you say and do. They do. If you're aggressive, if you're horrible, they'll make note of that. And they'll probably choose not to help you because of that. Because, you know, we're all human, you know? Just because we're talking about like the companies don't owe you anything. You know, the only time they owe you something is if there's been a contract that's been made. If you've bought a service or pay for a service or pay for a product and you've not received it or your service has been bad, then of course you deserve to be either compensated or you deserve a refund or something, right? But if you're just kind of calling up and grumbling or just being kind of rude or whatever, like they don't owe you anything and they don't have to give you anything, you know. But people are so scared about reputation these days that they will sometimes acquiesce and give you whatever you want because they're afraid. But a lot of the time when you talk to customer service people, they won't be like that. If you're respectful, you'll probably get what you want 9 times out of 10. And when I spoke to this guy and I was just really calm and just telling him what I wanted, we kind of started bartering a bit. He was like, okay, Christian, well, I can't give you that, but I could give you this. And I was like, could you knock off a few pounds? Let's agree. How about this price? We were literally bartering. It was like being at the market. And eventually he was like, deal. And I was like, okay, great, deal. And we agreed. I got a new phone. I dropped like £15 off my contract. So instead of paying like £40, I was paying like £25 or however much it was. I think it was less than that, actually. I think it was like £15 I was paying instead of like 25. So I was over the moon. And I was able to achieve that by being calm and respectful and nice.
That's good. That's all you need to be, especially in everything: podcasting, producing, directing,
Oh, yeah.
acting. So yeah, but I heard earlier that you mentioned that you're into music as well. And were you in a band, or were you just doing solo music, such as you were writing lyrics? And is that something that you going to make money on?
So I've been a musician all my life. I started when I was about 11, and it's been an on and off thing all my life. I have been in bands. I've been in metal bands, rock bands,
Wow.
and now I'm sort of like acoustic, and I'm open. I'm
Hmm.
a songwriter and a musician. I'm open to being in a rock band again or a metal band again. Um, I'm open to it, but I go back and forth on my feelings on it generally because the music industry is hard and thankless. Not to say the acting industry isn't, but it's it's a different. Put like this, the industry that I wanted to get into, 10, 15 years ago is different from the industry that exists today.
Oh yeah.
And if I was gonna do it, I would do it independent. And that's a lot harder, but it's possible. I think for me, I have different kind of interests. Like for me, it's I love to create music. That's a big part. Like I've written a lot of music in the last 2 to 3 years that I'm really proud of, and a lot of my fans and followers have been pushing me and saying, Christian, you need to get this out. You need to get this out. And I'm like, I know, I just don't have the equipment or the money. I desperately want to too. And this is a theme in my life of, well, if I had the money, I'd do this and I would do this. And that's the thing. I'm a guy that's got a lot of goals and things he wants to achieve with his life. I just need the money. I just need a break. That's it. But I'm not short of ambition or goals or anything like that. So when it comes to music, absolutely, the goal is to kind of get like I guess like a full length album out, probably around 20 songs or so, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and I think in the last 3 years I've written somewhere in the region of about 150 songs, give or take. But
Really?
yeah, like I write all the time, but as I'm sure many people that listen to this show can reciprocate, like not everything that you write is necessarily like worthy of going on a record. Like it's fleeting. It's like anything else creative. Like you have an idea, you create the thing, and some things stick, some things don't, and you just keep going. You keep moving forward. I perform music on my live streams every single week. You can find me on TikTok, Christian PK Reeve official, and Christian PK Reeve live. That's where I tend to go live. And there I tend to play my original music and covers and such. Um, I did perform about 2 years ago at an open mic night, but it wasn't. It was, I don't know. It was the same old like performing to people that don't really care, and I don't know. It just it. There's only so many times you can have your heart broken. I would start performing again if people were there to see me. That's the reality of it. But I'm very much like I'm very into like my acting and that side of things and everything else that I'm doing. But I'm open, so it's not a no. It's I'm open.
Yeah, I know how he was just telling us that, you got to put 20 songs in an album, you got to release it and not having money. That reminded me of, I don't know if you're familiar with Linkin Park, but they had an
Oh,
album they put out, Meteora, and
brilliant
they
album.
had 12 songs on the album. They were supposed to have 13, which was the song Lost, and that was
Yep.
just released. But that would have been on the album Meteora. So talking about some songs, like you want to put 20 songs on there, but you could fit 21. Maybe you could do one of 13 with 14, but it's always going to be a song that's not going to work on the album. And that's a song
Yeah.
years later is the one that will propel you into stardom.
Well,
It's
the
like, yeah, well,
reality is
you wrote the
that,
song
like,
like 20 years ago, but we should have released the song 20 years earlier. So.
well, I think the thing to remember with that is that like the songs that you write in a certain period of time tend to be specific to that period in time. So when you hear artists talk about albums a lot of the time, they'll say that like, okay, this album has a particular theme. Maybe it's grief, maybe it's happiness, whatever. Like it represents a certain time in their life. Um, and you got to make some decisions, some harsh decisions on the chopping block sometimes. I mean, for instance, Linkin Park at that time, I think they were signed to a label or whatever, right? So if they were independent, they could release as many as they want. But back then, they were, there's rules, so that there would have been like probably the record company says to them, you need to have this many songs on the album, and so they probably had to make some tough decisions. And that song just didn't make the cut, not because it's not a good song, but just because it's just whatever. Sometimes it does come down to like, oh, actually the artist just wants to have this many songs because it just makes sense. Sometimes it'll be that like that song doesn't fit for whatever, like the artist doesn't feel like it fits, but then the fans hear it later and think that absolutely could have fit. Like Lost, absolutely, you could hear it in that album. But I do feel like that particular song was very similar to other songs on the same record. And you know, I think like there's another unreleased song that they have where the intro is very similar to one of the songs on their first record. And I saw in the comments when people saw like a clip of that, because I think Linkin Park played it at like a radio show like 10, 15 years ago and then just never spoke about it again. People were saying like they probably didn't release this because that intro was so similar to the first that song on that first album. And bringing it back to me, like when I do eventually release a record, like I have released a solo acoustic record 10 years ago, it just wasn't very good. You know, because I wasn't as good back then. I didn't have confidence, and that's such a big part of being a musician, I think, is believing in yourself and having confidence. And you know, you're always getting better, you're always working on yourself and improving. And there'll be songs like I already have an idea in my head of like what songs will make the cut and what ones won't. And I know some of my followers, when they hear that, when they eventually see that, they'll be like, oh, why didn't these songs make it? And I'll be like, because they don't fit. But that's not to say I won't release them one day. It's just they don't fit in this idea that I have for this particular record. And you know, and then sometimes it's weird. Like there'll be songs that I've written that my audience really likes and want to hear, but I don't like anymore. I'm just like, and because that's the thing. Like when you go see your favorite artists and you see like what they choose to play, a lot of it tends to come down to what they want to play. Do you know what I mean? Like what's fun for them to play? Because obviously there's the obligatory, like, okay, we've got to play a few songs off the new album because we're promoting that, and we've got to play the fan favorites. But then everything else is kind of fair game. And if you're like a big band, like, I don't know, let's say Metallica, for example, you've got so much music to choose from, and there'll be expectations placed upon you because, you know, people have different interests, different albums that are their favorites. A better example would be Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden is a unique band where they've released so many records that they have to do like tours dedicated to certain eras of their music. So like sometimes they'll do a classic era tour and they'll just only play like the top 10, sorry, the main albums from like their 1980s, for example, or like the 90s or the 2000s. They'll still play a few like classics, you know. Like what they'll probably do is, if it's a 2-hour show, there'll be like half an hour of like songs from all eras, but then most of that hour and a half is going to be songs from that specific era. And Metallica's done that. Metallica did it with I saw when they did the Black Album, I think it was the 30th anniversary. I could be wrong. I think it was the 30th anniversary. I was there. I saw them play the Black Album back to front at a festival. It was really weird. So they started with I don't know what Through the Never or whatever the last song on Black Album is, and then they ended on Enter Sandman, which is weird. And then the rest of the gig was just, you know, just classics basically. So it's really interesting. But yeah,
that's very interesting. Like Prince, Michael Jackson, many others, they have probably lots and lots of music still shelved, like even from the Beatles that haven't been released yet, that could be released. There could be like 6, maybe 20, maybe 30 more Prince albums released because of all the music he wrote.
Yeah, and it's interesting though, because you never know what's gonna like connect with people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes when you hear some of this music released, as harsh as it sounds, you can tell why it wasn't released, because maybe it just wasn't a finished idea. Maybe it was just jamming. Yeah, I remember one time listening to Mac DeMarco sitting there and like just playing. He was just playing. I think, what did he call it? Like trash. Something he called it like trash garbage music or something. But it was like really good stuff. But it was clearly just like vibes. Like he just created something in an afternoon and he just had a bit of fun with it and he moved on and he didn't release it because it wasn't really a song. It's just like a jam. I'm 100%, 1,000% Michael Jackson, Prince have songs in the vault that never made the cut. But I mean, sometimes it's not a good idea. Sometimes it is. I remember that Michael Jackson song, and I think it was in the mid 2010s where they took some old stuff that he recorded, and then they had people like Justin Timberlake and various other people on the record. I can't remember for the life of me remember what it was, but it received a lot of criticism because it just felt like an attempt to just use the music, like use his name, but it wasn't like a good track or whatever. But that again, it's subjective. That's the thing about music and all forms of entertainment. It's one person loves it, one person hates it, but it's iffy. Once the person's passed away, it's tricky, isn't it? Because it's like some people will say like, oh, well, you're just profiteering off their name, and that's an argument. But then on the other side, it's like, well, but the fans want to hear the music. Like I got so excited learning that Linkin Park was releasing a new song which has Chester on it from one of my favorite albums from back in the day. It's like a lot of people were saying it's like a time capsule in essence. It's got that modern production on it, of course, but like it's from that time, and it's a bit like when you discover an artist for the first time and their music makes you feel nostalgic, but you've never you don't remember this, you never listened to them. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's weird, but it's kind of comforting. It's like a friend you never knew.
No, that's true. And based on bands, like I just discovering bands just recently that I never even knew existed that have been around longer than 5-10 years. I'm like, who's this?
Yeah.
What? I thought I knew bands, and there's more, And it's kind of funny because everyone has their own album, everyone has their own band, they have their own band names. Some leave the music industry altogether and get regular jobs. So
That to me just that always blows my mind to think like there's people that have like wrestling, for example, or doing music or whatever. They've toured the world, maybe even been famous for a little while, and then they just work a 9 to 5, and nothing wrong with that. All right, not criticizing. I'm just saying that like it blows. I don't think I could do that to go from that extreme to another. I understand wanting to maybe have like a quiet life kind of thing. I understand that, but I don't know that once you've had that, like, could anything ever compare? I don't know.
yeah, I've heard stories where many of the actors who used to be well known and on sitcoms were found working at a Walmart or some were homeless.
That's a
It's
shame.
kind of sad because what happened to you? What happened to you? Like you were on the show for 7 years, everyone loved you, and then now 20 years after showing off the air, aren't you getting
Well,
residuals? What's going on there, Like
I'll
why
say
are you
this.
homeless?
I mean, some of it might come down to just an individual person's, you never know what someone is dealing with. People could have drug problems. People could have personal issues. They could be dealing with so many things you have no idea about. I mean, a good example is Matthew Perry, who played Chandler in Friends. He was had an alcohol problem, and you can sort of see it throughout the seasons a little bit. Like you can see how his physical condition changed over the time. But I'll be honest, like I didn't know. I would have never known that unless he'd said that. And it turns out like some of that time was the worst time in his life. And fortunately, he recovered and he got through it and he moved forward in a positive way with his life. But yeah, you never know what people are dealing with. And I think with the problem with acting is it's and I don't often hear people talk about this, but acting you're self-employed and you're chasing project to project. So when you're doing a project, a lot of the time you're probably thinking about the next one, which is bad because you should be there sitting and enjoying it and doing it. And for the most part, you probably are. You know what I mean? But sometimes like I'll be on a job and it'll only be like a day and I'll be sending out emails, whatever, for the next thing. Yeah, planning for the next because you're just you're chasing an income. Sometimes that's what it comes down to. And that there's people, I've seen that have been in productions and been on them for years, but then they can't find work afterwards. Sometimes that's because they get typecast. Sometimes that's just because the industry is very thankless and there's a lot of competition. It can be disheartening. You face a lot of rejection, and you get told whatever, you're not good enough, keep trying, kid, all that stuff. And that even people at the very top get told that. This is something that I'm learning more as I sort of head deeper and deeper into the industry. Even some of the very best actors of all time get told stuff like that, and it's kind of brutal. And I think you got to have a thick skin, and you got to kind of just keep going. Um, sometimes people are not easy to work with. That can be a factor as well, because there's what you see on screen, and then there's what happens backstage. This is why I think it's not only important to be a decent person because it's important to be a decent person and be nice to people. You got to also be a decent person from a professional standpoint, because if you're difficult to work with, news travels fast, and you'd be surprised. Like, it's a small world. That sometimes I meet people and they're like, oh, they know this person or whatever. News travels fast, and I don't think you get anywhere by being unprofessional or by not, or by being mean or whatever, right? So that's an element to it. But the truth is, there's no one to specific answer for why sometimes people don't do well after having been part of a big production. Sometimes it's just what do they call it? 15 minutes of fame kind of deal. Like some of the very biggest actors have had that. I think it's Tim Robbins, who was the lead in Shawshank Redemption. He had like a 5-year run of movies around the same time as when he released that. So he released that. It was huge, blockbuster. He made tons, millions, whatever, set him up, and he had a bunch of really great movies around that time. And then you didn't see him for a while. And the thing is, he probably still kept acting. It's not like that's the thing. That's the perception. It's the same with like your favorite band. They probably kept touring. They're probably still touring, but you don't hear about them because the media is not behind them. Some people have that media backing, and they're constantly pushed in. They constantly get projects. They're constantly pushed. Whatever. Some people don't. The whole thing is a gamble, is a risk. And I think the thing that's interesting is that everyone has different goals. Like, I know of myself, like my goal is not to continuously be in the public eye or something. Like my goal is to just, as I said at the beginning of this, be a working actor, get work continuously, making a living from it, right? But I fully accept the fact that, like, if I did make it, that might only last a year or two, and then it's back to obscurity, and that's fine, because I think it's about how you take these things. Some people can't handle not being in the public eye, or not being famous anymore, and it's difficult, because I think it really boils down to the fact that everything has a beginning and an end, and you've got to enjoy it while it lasts, but then you have to move on. And maybe not everyone does. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm just theorizing here, but there's a multitude of reasons. And I mean, I don't know. Sometimes people can, they have really difficult challenges in their life, and then they can overcome them and return. I mean, just look at Brendan Fraser. Such a difficult life he's had, from going like to being this like heartthrob to being like a massive, huge Hollywood star for years. And then boom, lots happen in his personal life. Stuff happens in the industry. He gets quote unquote blacklisted, and then he returns, and they call it the Renaissance. Like he's, but and the funny thing is, like, there's a sense of surprise, but not really. I mean, he was always an excellent actor. There was never any doubt. It's just that the machine wasn't behind him. But now we have social media, and we have the public. The public is behind things. The public has always been behind him because he's a great guy. He's a good dude. And you want to get behind someone like that.
So when Will Smith went over to Chris Rock to slap him because he made fun of his wife, do you think that Will didn't think of the consequences? Like, do you think that would have affected his career? Do you think it was planned?
So I'm glad that you said that. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big fan of wrestling, professional wrestling. And for anyone that's a fan of wrestling here, you'll know the term work. When I first looked at that, I was like, that's got to be planned. That's got to be a work. Work is a wrestling industry term. It comes from the carnival because wrestling comes from the carnival traditionally. And there was all these like insider terms, the way that the carnies would set up games to kind of fool people, get their money, whatever, right? So there's a lot of like that still exists in wrestling that's developed over time. And you constantly hear this idea of a work where they set up a scenario where a majority of what you see or what the storyline is based in truth. But some part of it will be false. And the viewer, when watching this, will be like, okay, well, I know that's true. And I know that's true. But I'm not sure if that's true. Oh, hang on. And then there's a bit of a like, oh, and then that's what draws you in. When we saw that slap, we knew the context. We knew that like Chris Rock had a bit of a falling out with Will Smith and Jada Smith from years ago, something to do with like when he was hosting it years ago, and he sort of lightly mocked them and they took it badly or whatever. And then everything happened with the Smiths, doing that bizarre podcast where they spoke about how they were sleeping with other people, and it was all just deeply uncomfortable. But it was all in the public eye, whatever. That was their decision to do that. Now, the reason why I thought it might have been a work is because, or planned, as you put it, is because, and going back to what you said before, when you mentioned how did Will Smith think of the consequences? Did he think any of that? I thought, like, there's no way. Surely there's no way a man of this esteem, this successful, a man that's always been kind of squeaky clean. He's never really had any, like, to the best of my knowledge, like controversies or anything. He was always kind of somewhat mocked as being like the clean, hey, happy rapper. But everyone loved it. He's part of popular culture. When you think of the 90s, boom, Will Smith, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Men in Black, like it's immediately that comes up to mind. He's been in some great movies. He's beloved. But now his reputation is shattered. And for the longest time, I looked at that event and I thought, there's no way this is real. I looked at the fact that like Chris Rock leaned into it. You see that when he walks up to him. It was real. It was 100% real, and it was embarrassing for everybody involved. Chris Rock came off great, to be honest. I don't know if you catched his recent comedy show. He ripped them to shreds, and he did it in a decent way. He didn't just go like, oh, Will Smith's an arsehole. He kind of just made the point that we were all thinking, that like they chose to air their kind of dirty laundry to the public, and people judge them for it because that's what people do when you tell them things. They judge you one way or another. And I guess the Smiths just didn't take it very well. There's been time after time after time of them taking exception with what people say. And look, people are going to say shit about you regardless of what you do, pardon my language, but they're going to say things about you, whatever you do. You have to accept that, especially if you're like an actor or entertainer or whatever. They're going to say things. In that moment, when Will Smith walked up on that stage and slapped Chris Rock, I don't think that he thought about the consequences. He was just acting on emotion. And one thing that's interesting for me from a relationship standpoint, it's well known that relationship that they have is not healthy. Okay. There's many people that think that they shouldn't be together. I agree. I think it's a toxic relationship. I think that the wife, controls it. And I think that in that moment, he felt he had to do that to sort of like win her approval. Like if he didn't say anything, he'd like lose her or something. So he kind of, in a way, I kind of feel for him. I've been in a similar situation myself, and it's not nice to be in that situation. You feel trapped. You feel like, oh, I got to do this, and then you do something that's not you. Will Smith doing that was not Will Smith, but his reaction since then has been pretty bad. Like I've seen a video with him. I don't know if it was in reference to the Chris Rock thing or something else, but he was reacting to something where someone was mocking him. I think it was Chris Rock. And he's just seen cradling his Oscar award or whatever. And it's like, dude, you've got the wrong priorities if this is where your head is at. I fully believe that he can recover it and he can change public perception because he is a good dude at heart. He's a good person. I think he just needs to do a lot of soul searching. And I think maybe he needs to get away from that woman. I don't think she's good for him. I don't think he's good for her. You know, sometimes it's like that. He can
Yeah.
absolutely rebuild it, but it's a journey and it might take some time. And right now, it's not great, to be honest. It's not great. And I think a lot of people looking at that, I mean, you saw the reactions of the audience. There were a few people giggling, whatever, but most people looked at that like, oh my God, that's awful. Like I remember looking at the reaction of like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He was horrified. He just looked at like, you know, everyone's like, oh my God, because it's serious. What you're seeing, it wasn't, I know a lot of people memed it and were like, ha ha ha. But I don't know. I looked at it like, damn, like that's awful. That's terrible. Like you just know that it's like it's an uncomfortable thing. It's like when these things happen in real life, like most people will react like, oh, that's really bad. That's uncomfortable. Like you can tell that person's hurting and you want to help, but you can't really get involved. It's like, it's a horrible situation to be in.
But that's nothing compared to the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard situation.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of that, to be honest. I hear a lot of back and forth. You know, when it first was happening, I felt like Johnny Depp was maybe the victim in that whole scenario. Now I hear other things that suggest maybe Amber was more of a victim. I don't know. I think it's bizarre to have a case like that be so public and televised. I think that was weird. It just makes me sad. I don't know. It just makes me sad.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's just the life of an actor, the life of a musician. There's always something like the infighting, like
Mm.
Liam and Noel Gallagher, and they're
Again,
brothers, but they
and
hate each other, and they don't even want to. They don't even want to do a show as Oasis anymore. It's like what is happening? And yet you got people like the Rolling Stones who've been around for over 50 years who are still performing together. I don't know um,
yeah.
how long Mick Jagger can go on.
Oh, he'll go to
Is
the
he gonna be
very
like a
end, man.
95-year-old parading on stage?
Absolutely. I fully believe it. I think the whole Oasis thing is so sad because like, I remember seeing an interview with Liam Gallagher maybe 5 or 6 years ago. He was on some talk show and he was being asked about it. And he just said, like, screw Oasis, like, it's about the family. I just want to kind of reconnect with Noel. And I just, in that moment, I really felt that, you know, because it's not about the money. Like, they would make, they've turned down, I think, as much as like 50 million, 100 billion at some point. It will never be about the money. Those
Mm.
two have a legitimate beef with each other. And it's family. Like, we've all been there when we fall out with family, and you got to try your best. I mean, you got to try your best to fix it. And I feel like I'm the same. Like, I'd rather just that they fix it rather than see an Oasis concert for the sake of whatever, like anniversary. I'd rather they just fix it, man, so that they're happy. You know,
I see what
life's
you
too
mean.
short.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's better that way. It's all about family. It's not about how much money you can make playing just one more concert. Yeah, but Noel and like Liam and I are just not going to like each other. Why don't we just reconnect and discuss it? Yeah, I think you're
Well,
right in that.
it's weird as well. There's this expectation from society a lot of the time placed upon musicians,
Yeah.
especially to do like reunions and stuff. Like a good example is the Smiths. They've never done a reunion, and they don't think they ever will. And it's because like Johnny Marr and Morrissey are so different as people and as songwriters and everything. And I've heard Morrissey in the past talk about it like that was a special moment in time and it forever will be. But, you know, he's moved on, like they're not, they're not going to make it work. And it's a shame, but at the same time, it's like you got to think about it like this: like the people you work with, you got to enjoy working with the people you work with. If you can't, then you're not going to enjoy the experience. And if you've already made your money, like if you've already been successful and it's not about money and now it's just about the art and the performance and stuff, why would you go into a room with someone you don't like? It doesn't make sense, does it? So that's why you don't see artists like that getting together and doing it. And maybe that's why you don't see the Gallagher brothers getting together to do it. But the interesting thing there is that they're family. They definitely have seen each other over the years. They must have. I can't believe that they haven't seen each other since, when was it? 2010. Like that, it's impossible. It can't be true. If it is true, it's really sad. Yeah, I hope they work it out.
Yeah, it's disheartening to realize that some bands break up because of that whole issue with infighting and with family members. And many bands have family members, like not just Noel and Liam, but I believe that one of those two twins, was it the Tegan and Sarah? I think Tegan and Sarah. I don't know if they're still performing, but they seem to get along pretty well.
What's the band?
Tegan and Sarah.
Never
They're a band. They're twins. Tegan and Sarah. Oh wow.
Okay. Wait, are they from the States?
I believe they're Canadian. I thought their name would have been worldwide, but if you go somewhere like in Poland, you mention Rolling Stones, oh, Mick Jagger, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but so that's interesting. Now, regarding your podcasting, who was the most controversial guest that you ever had?
Oh. It was early on. I think it was like episode 6 or 7. It's no longer available. I've since removed the episode. I did a lot of work to remove that episode because it's funny how. Nah, don't worry. It's nothing like that. But there was something controversial actually that was said in there that I didn't personally agree with, and I did challenge it, but I didn't challenge it enough. And that was a criticism I received. And I was like, you know what? Fair enough. People are right. And I chose eventually to remove the episode kind of as a way of saying, like, I don't support this, whatever. I did a bonus episode a year or two later on something completely different. So, like, the numbers now work. But basically, it was very early on in the show. As I say, episode 6, 7. We're up to like 204 now. It's 3 years later. So, yeah, there's a lot of time. But for anyone that started a podcast, I'll say this. The idea that you start with won't be the idea that you have in years to come. It will change. It's inevitable. Because you change. You get more confident, whatever the guests you have, the topics you have, it shapes over time. And when I look back, and I remember showing a friend of mine this, and I said, like, what do you think of this? And he was like, honestly, Christian, you probably need to delete this. There's some wild stuff in here that this person says that could get you in trouble. But more to the point, like there's hate stuff in there that in a way, by you having it on your platform, it's like you support it. And I'd never really considered that before. But that's the thing, like as you start producing these things more and more, that's something you have to think about. Every person that appears on your show, you have to think about that. If any of the guests I've had on my show in the future do something, I don't know, that's unforgivable, you can't defend, I might have to take those episodes down and sort of in a way, it's kind of like in a way of protest and being like, I don't support this person. I don't platform this person. It's something you have to think about. Granted, it's not something I have to often think about because I choose to avoid controversy. I choose to avoid things like that. And the Christian Reeve podcast is more about like sharing life stories. It's like feel good stuff. It's like showing the human struggle, showing ideally whenever you listen to the show, you walk away with it having learned something, been inspired by that person, or you're interested in the topic. Like we did an episode recently for episode 200 where we spoke about the afterlife and life after death. And I had a guest on my show. Shout out to Josh Leonard, the Pursuit of Infinity podcast. a friend that I'd worked with before on the show, and we had fun together and we did it together. And that's the key. You got to be having fun, and you got to kind of think about what works for you. So there are guests that I won't have on the show. Like, and look, I have had religious people, I've had political people and stuff. I tend to avoid that. I try my best. Like, I had someone on recently, very recently, like 3 or 4 episodes ago, and they were a religious guest, and I was a bit reluctant, I'll be honest, at first to have him on the show. And it's not because I haven't had religious people on, but when I have had them on, we've spoken about sort of controversial stuff, but like they were doing good things, and I felt like those things needed to be like promoted. Do you know what I mean? But this guest I had on the show was talking about his beliefs and stuff like that, and I had to be very careful with it. The show was 2 hours. I cut it down to 1 hour, and I cut out a lot of stuff that I felt I couldn't really put it out there. I felt like it was, it's a rocky road. It is, because it's like, I think sometimes sooner or later you have to take a stand on certain things in life. But I don't like this idea of being pushed to have to, for instance, show a political opinion or show a particular allegiance towards a certain group or narrative or whatever. I don't like that idea. Like, I'll absolutely stand up for things like, oh, I'm against racism, I'm against sexism, etc. Right? But I'm not like that kind of person. I'm not. It's the reason I don't do like a debate show. I don't do. I would suck at that. Just a bit. I would suck. I'm more of like a documentarian, like a storyteller or an interviewer, journalist, something like that. That's kind of more my role, and that's what I try to perfect. And some people, they don't like that. They're like, oh no, you should have controversy. Like, I know controversy sells. I realized that. I'm sure that I could have got millions of followers now if I'd have just put controversial people on there. But with that comes a different approach, I think. And I'm just not prepared to do that. That's not me.
I understand that, Christian. Thanks for sharing that. We're gonna ask you what was the pandemic like for you?
You ready for this? Mm-hmm. My life didn't change that much, to be honest. If anything, I realized, like, you know what? Like, I need to get out more. So, okay. It was a bit of an interesting one. I came back. So I was living in this country called Estonia for like 3 years. I came back to England February 2020. Like, literally just before everything's going down. I go down to London to see family, and then I move up to Manchester, right? So while everyone in the news is beginning to talk about this weird COVID thing, right? I'm staying in a hostel, desperately trying to find a place to live and stressing the hell out and sleeping in a room full of like 4 strangers and worrying that I'm just going to get killed at night. Like, that's my reality. There's no toilet rolls in this place. There's no hot water in this place. It's dire straits, but it was cheap. And I had no money at the time. So that was my life right then. And then I managed to find a place. I move all my stuff in, and it's like, the 28th of February, 1st of March. I kid you not, a week later, we go into our first lockdown. And so now I'm in this, I'm in a new place that I've never been to. I don't know where anything is. I don't know anyone. And now we're in lockdown. I'm also jobless at this point.
Oh,
yeah. Because here's the thing. I came back from Estonia thinking like, oh yeah, I'll get a job easily, no problem. Like, it'll take me like a month or something. It took me a year and a half to get a job. And I have a degree. Yeah, I got like 5 years, 6 years experience or whatever. But everything was closing down. So it's not like I could go get like a shop job or whatever. And I did try, believe me. I applied for everything. Like, even supermarkets were rejecting me. And I'm like, what? I'm like overqualified. Like, what do you mean? But there you go. So I used that time because I've always desperately wanted the time to pursue, acting. YouTube, content creation, whatever. Now I had that time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it didn't take that long to apply for jobs every day. That was like an hour work. The rest of my time, got to do something. So I used that time to build my brand and build who I am and what I do and what you see today. And I also did volunteer work for during COVID and for about a year and a half, I think, give or take. And that was very, I'm very proud of that. It was very eye opening. I got to help a lot of people, and at a time when things were very uncertain, and I was risking my life every time I left my house. I was risking my life,
Hmm.
but I felt like I didn't want to sit around at home doing nothing. I wanted to get out there and help people, and I felt like that was a good way to do it, and I'll always be proud of that. And I'd love to go do volunteer work again in the future, and I plan to. Anyway, that was kind of like my life throughout most of the pandemic. Things obviously got easier as time went on. Eventually, I landed a job, and we moved out of the pandemic, and life went on as usual. But there was a lot of time where I missed family greatly. Didn't get to see them at Christmases and stuff. I didn't. It was very lonely. It was difficult. Um, there were times when I get depressed. There were times when I didn't leave the house for like a month at one point. That was really bad.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm the type of person that always just keeps working. Like when I'm sad, I just work. It's kind of sad. I guess it's probably not the healthiest way to deal with things, but I just can't sit and be miserable. I feel like, you know what? I'd rather just work and just work through this, and things will get better. And that's how I function, and it tends to work. And that's what I did. And I just kept creating. And I think because of that, I built confidence in myself to do what I do now. And I started all these things I always wanted to do. Like I'd always wanted to do a podcast. I started that. I started that in summer of 2020. And I've been doing it ever since. I started properly doing stuff with YouTube. I started on Instagram and TikTok. And like I made an effort to think, okay, I've trained in marketing. Let's use that degree and that wealth of knowledge I've grown over the years and invest that into what I do online. And it's been a process. It's still building. I had a few blips here and there where it seemed like I was going to go somewhere. Like I got a viral video on TikTok and a few other videos that went viral, and I was like, oh, this is the beginning. This is it. And then nothing happened. And then I learned a valuable lesson about, not getting your hopes up and managing expectations, but not being perturbed, like a real problem people always have with the online game is focusing too much on numbers. That's the worst thing you can do. Focus on the content. The people will come eventually. They really will. They will see how good the content is, and eventually they won't be able to deny you and your talent, and they will recognize you, and they will come. And it's beginning to happen for me now. There's more and more people joining us in the live streams. There's more people checking out my shows. I'm getting more invitations to be on wonderful shows such as yours, and I believe that comes through hard work. It doesn't come from just sitting and wishing and hoping and praying. It comes from putting yourself out there, working hard, and having a good attitude, and I know it's not easy. I know how tough it is. I know how ruthless the world can be sometimes, but you have to maintain that positivity. And you have to believe in yourself, guys. Believe in yourself. Things will get better, and they do get better.
Thank you, Christian. Really appreciate that. We really appreciate you coming on our podcast
Thank you.
today. And it was a pleasure speaking to you and getting to know you. Everyone, in the description, Christian Reeve podcast, check that out. What episode are you in now?
204.
204. Wow. I really appreciate that, Christian. Um, Sorry I have to go at this point, but we appreciate you on our podcast and talking about life things and sharing. And I feel it's an awesome thing to do. And you're right. And keep going. Don't give up. Everyone, check the description. Like I said, Christian Reed Podcast. And have an awesome day. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you. Peace.
See you, everyone.